Before the start of every season, each team is given an over-under wins total. And at the end, we have to look back and see how bad some of the picks were. Last week, we looked at the 5 teams that overperformed. Now, let's look at the biggest disappointments. Before we start trashing Vegas and their odds makers, we have to give them some credit. They nailed 4 teams, and last week we went over the Phillies and the Padres, so we'll look at the other 2 teams now. One of those teams was the Colorado Rockies, projected for 68.5, 168. This team is in a full rebuild. They were actually better last year with 74 wins, but after losing their star offensive player Trevor Story and one of their best pitchers, John Gray, they were expected to take a step back. This was despite signing Chris Bryant. Well, he put up some pretty good numbers, but he only played in 42 games. Their only good offensive player was CJ Cron, hitting 29 homers and driving in 102 with an OPS of 783, leading the 10th place offense in the National League. Their pitching was dead last. Not one of their starters had an ERA better than 4.5, and Daniel Bard was the only real bright spot out of their bullpen. The other team is the Toronto Blue Jays, projected for 92.5, 192. This team just missed the playoffs last year with 91 wins. They lost their Cy Young winner Robbie Ray and their MVP candidate Marcus Semien, but they brought in Kevin Gausman and Matt Chapman, so they were given another win and a half. Many people considered them the favorites to win the AL East this year. For manager Charlie Montoyo, high expectations came with a short leash. He was fired when the team was 46-42. John Schneider took over and the team played much better from that point on, finishing 46-28. They were too far behind the Yankees to catch them, even with their second half collapse, but they were able to secure the top wildcard seed. Their pitching was only the middle of the pack, 7th in the league, despite an amazing season from Alek Manoah, as well as very good seasons from Kevin Gausman and Ross Stripling. And out of the bullpen, Jordan Romano was awesome. But that offense was number 2 in the American League, nobody having a standout MVP-type season, but 4 starters with an OPS of over 800. That's not even including the starting catcher for the All-Star team, Alejandro Kirk. Tied for 4th place is the Los Angeles Angels, projected for 83.5, 173, a 10.5 game difference. It was the same old story with the Angels, but with a twist. In April, they were one of the best teams in baseball. On May 24th, they were 27-17, and then they just lost it. And I mean, they lost it. They lost 14 games in a row, and after loss number 12, Joe Maddon was fired. Phil Nevin took over, but it didn't get much better. They hit rock bottom in July, winning just 6 of their 24 games. But from August through the end of the season, they were an even 30-30, so there is hope for next year. Shohei Ohtani had 34 homers and an 875 OPS, but his pitching was off the charts this year. 15-9, 2.33 ERA, 1.72 ERA+, 219 strikeouts. Their pitching overall was pretty good, finishing 6th in the American League. Mike Trout missed the month over July and August, but when he was in the lineup, he was amazing. 40 homers, 999 OPS, 178 OPS+. Taylor Ward was also a breakout star this year with his 23 homers and 833 OPS, but the rest of the offense just wasn't there. They were 3rd to last in the American League in runs scored, so as much flack as the Angels pitching gets, this year the offense was the problem. Tied for 4th place is the Chicago White Sox, projected for 91.5, 181, a 10.5 game difference. I made a whole video breaking down the White Sox failure in 2022. They were the runaway champs of the AL Central in 2021, and they made some great moves to strengthen their bullpen. I thought they were going to be great, but they massively underperformed. Dylan Cease had the season of his life, but the pitching staff as a whole saw its ERA go up, especially the starter's ERA. That went from about 3.5 to close to 4. The offense was a major problem. Just about all of their big hitters had a down season, especially Yasmani Grandal. They scored 110 fewer runs this year. They were also last in the American League in defense, committing 101 errors and giving up a league-worst 86 unearned runs. This very talented team played very poorly and still finished with a 500 record. I think that speaks to how good they could have been. Tied for 2nd is the Detroit Tigers, projected for 78.5, 166, a 12.5 game difference. I think there was some major disrespect for the Tigers at just 78.5. They won 47 games in 2019, and 2 years later, they won 77. This was a team on the rise. They only got better when they signed guys like Javier Baez, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Andrew Chafin. I even thought they were going to the playoffs and end up with a win total in the high 80s. This team was just bad all around. They were bottom 3rd in the league in just about every pitching category, including their team 4.04 ERA that ranked 11th, and their offense was just miserable. I made a video after their first 69 games and pointed out they were on pace to score 465 runs. That's 2.87 runs per game. If they kept that up, they would be among the worst in baseball history. They did improve. They scored 557 runs, which is 3.44 runs per game, but that was still good for last place in baseball. They were also last in home runs at 110, 17 behind the Guardians, who were next to last, and well below half of the Yankees. They were even half of what the Brewers had, and they always get knocked for their bad offense. Aside from triples, they finished bottom 3 in just about every offensive category. It's going to be hard to pick the Tigers to be any good next year. Tied for second is the Cincinnati Reds, projected for 74.5, 162, a 12.5 game difference. I have no idea why Vegas thought the Reds would finish in the mid-70s. I had them exactly right at 62 wins, and it wasn't hard to see why. They lost Sonny Gray, Nick Castellanos, Jesse Winker, and Eugenio Suarez. This team was tearing it down, and they started 3-22. Since then, they were 59-78. That's a .430 winning percentage, about a 70 win pace. So maybe this team was a little better than a 62 win team by the end. But their season was over before it even started. Trading away Luis Castillo mid-season didn't help either. He went to the Mariners to join other ex-Reds, Winker and Suarez. Just like the Tigers, this team was bottom 3 in pitching, bottom 5 in offense. Joey Votto had a terrible year before he ended his season early due to injury. Jonathan India missed a ton of games. Mike Moustakas put in about a half a season. So really, this year was all about the excitement of Hunter Green and the excellent Alexis Diaz. He had a 1.84 ERA, but led the team in saves with 10. That hurts. In first place is the Washington Nationals, projected for 71.5, 155, a 16.5 game difference. Just like you never want to project 111 wins for the Dodgers, you also never want to project 107 losses for the Nationals. The embarrassing thing was they were projected to be better than the Orioles, Pirates, Diamondbacks, A's, and Rockies. The Nationals were the worst team in baseball by 5 full games, the A's being second at 102 losses. They only hit 136 homers. That was worse than the National League. But they gave up 244 homers. That was also worse than the National League. Second to last in ERA, third to last in runs. They traded all their offensive firepower away in Juan Soto and Josh Bell. And it all became about playing their young guys they got from their trades over the last 2 years. C.J. Abrams was brought in to be the shortstop of the future. Kelbert Ruiz got a lot of playing time as their franchise catcher. They got an awesome starter in Mackenzie Gore. And Joey Meneses had a standout season over his 56 games, hitting .324, 13 homers, and an OPS of .930. Steven Strasburg only saw the field once, and Patrick Corbin continued to be terrible. The Nats were projected to be bad, and they were still baseball's most disappointing team. That's all for this list. Let me know what you think about these teams, if you have anything to add that I missed. And don't forget to check out the 5 most surprising teams from this year. That link is down below. Before you go, don't forget to drop a like, and please give me a sub for more content just like this. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.